one of the reasons why people struggle with meditation is when they let go of the mind. When you let go of control of the mind, then there seems to be a little bit of panic, fear, distraction. And what comes up here at this point of letting go of the mind is that you're not used to how wild the mind is, because you've been trying to control it so much that you're not used to it being free. You've penned the mind. You've put a box around the activity of the mind. You've tried to restrain it. I use the metaphor of a wild horse. You're a farmer, but you've kept this horse in such a small fenced area. And keeping the horse in this fenced area required a lot of energy. You're controlling it by limiting it. You didn't give it enough freedom. And letting go of the mind, the more and more you let go, you could say with this analogy, is you're giving it more and more space. So every time you let go of it, or every time you just relax, you're going to feel like this fence expands. You let go of it a little bit more, it expands. You're simply just giving it space. You could think of it that way in this explanation. You're just giving it more and more space. And it's almost like that's what it wants. That this horse, it's just so restless. That's what people know. They say, I got a restless mind. It's just so agitated. It just wants to move. Yeah, but it's a wild horse, and you're limiting it to a 20 by 20 space. So you give it more space. You give it more space. Let it roam. Let it run. And this is what stops someone early on in their meditation practice. They're not used to the mind having that amount of freedom. They're not used to the mind roaming, having these wild thoughts come up. You're simply giving the mind space. You're giving it the freedom to roam. And then you're not judging it. You're allowing it to roam. What you were doing the whole time was you're penning it, limiting this wild horse. And then you say, okay, well, I'm going to give you more space. I'm going to give you twice the amount of space. The 20 by 20 goes to a 40 by 40. I'm going to give you more space. But then what you don't do is you don't go in that fenced off area trying to chase the horse around, trying to tell it where it can only go in that space. That's not what it is. That would be like judging the thoughts and trying to control them. No, you give it more space. Now you just simply allow it to roam. Allow it to be free. You don't give it more space and then want to try and control it. There'd be no difference between the big fenced area and the little fenced area. So what you may not be used to is having the mind roam free. You're not used to the mind simply being wild. it wants to be active. So just let it be active. And this, when you say, okay, I'm going to let go of the mind, meaning I'm going to let it be free. I'm going to give it space. Okay, so I give it space. I'm going to let it be free. Well, what do you think happens to this horse when it goes from a 20 by 20 fenced off area? Let's make it bigger now. To then you give it, I don't know, 5 acres, right? It's like it goes and wanders, it explores, it moves. You've given it 5 acres. It's so used to a 20 by 20 fenced off area. Now you get 5 acres. It's huge. It just wanders. It's going to move. Now, knowing this, that's what it's going to do, then you don't need to come in and try and control it. And early on in your meditation practice, if you're not used to this, then this is what kind of scares you. And then you tighten it up again and you give it some space, but then it's like, whoa, it's getting too crazy. It's getting too busy. It's moving too much. Of course it's moving too much. You were limiting it so much. So now that you've loosened your limitations, you're now surprised by, it seems to want to run. Of course it wants to run. It's a wild horse. Your mind is like this wild horse. So of course it's going to run. So knowing that it's going to run, allow it to run. Don't get scared. Allow the mind to be wild. It's going to just start popping up random thoughts that don't make any sense, but you're not interested in it making sense or not making sense. Why? Because you're not judging it. You're just going to see it. It seems so random. Before there was actually like some sort of sequence to these thoughts that made them feel very linear. But now you're seeing it's just jumping all over the place. Some weird thought to another weird thought to another unrelated thought to another. They just start feeling very unrelated, very weird, very strange, very wild. But that's fine because you're allowing it to be wild. You're not trying to tame it. So you let go of trying to tame this wild horse. Instead, you just simply give it the space that it wants. So you give it ample space. You give it so much space and you're hands off. You're not trying to tame it. And by knowing this, then this gets you past this kind of fear that may be arising at this point where you go, the mind is too wild. What do I need to do? And you come back to closing it, or you say, that's enough of the meditation. No. It's because you haven't waited it out long enough. That actually what happens is this wild horse that goes from a 20 by 20 fenced off area, and all of a sudden you give it 20 acres. It runs until it gets tired. You let it run. You let it roam until it's roamed, until it's happy roaming. And the next thing you know you have a happy horse. The horse was unhappy because it was so limited. The horse was unhappy because it didn't have the freedom. You just have to wait it out a little longer. That let it be wild. Of course it's gonna stand up, kick its feet, right? It's gonna start galloping all over the place. It's just exploring this. You gave it 20 acres. It's just roaming around. It's exploring, right? So you just let it. And you notice that it just gets tired. Like it exhausts itself. And then it finds just an area that it just wants to kind of hang out. And you see it's actually not causing you any troubles. It was only causing you troubles because you were restraining it. But what it actually wants is it wants to be free. It wants to be free. And what you might be worried about is, well, I don't know if this horse is going to come back. What if I lose it forever? Now we're saying 20 acres, even if you don't even have a fence around these 20 acres, because that's what you're not even doing, right? I'm saying give it 20 acres, but I didn't say anything about building any fences. So you're just the farmer that's have these 20 acres, but there's no fence. So this horse can essentially run away. But it's like it doesn't. It doesn't. So what you're left with is actually this horse that's enjoying its freedom. And it's there when it's needed. It's there when it's needed. The mind is enjoying its freedom. It's there when it's needed. It has the ability to roam when it wants. You're allowing it to roam. You're allowing it to explore. And it's happy because it's like it's got that freedom. There's no happiness without freedom. Look at your own life. There's no happiness without freedom. So the same way as you treat the mind, the same way. Give it the freedom. You give it the freedom and you notice, it's happy. It's happy. Right? So then it just kind of wanders, but it gets tired from, it's not just galloping 20 acres all day long. It finds some spot, got some hay, grass, lays down, finds some shade. You're not out there running after it, trying to tame it. It's like it's happy with you as the owner, as the farmer, that you've given it. Thank you for giving me. All I've wanted is just this space. All I've ever wanted is the freedom. But you were afraid to give it freedom. So like this with your meditation is when you give it space, when you let go, let go, let go, let go, let go, right? It's giving it more and more and more space. Don't be surprised when it just starts wandering. Don't be surprised when it starts picking up the speed. Whoa, there's even more thoughts. I thought this whole meditation is to get rid of thoughts. There seems to be more thoughts. But like I said, as you just wait it out, there's going to be more thoughts. Yes, there's going to be what feels like, wow, there's a lot of, this seems to be the opposite of what I thought was going to happen with this meditation. But like I said, it's just that period of time where you're removing that limit. You're giving it more space. It starts running all over the place. I don't know how long that takes. It seems like it takes less and less with more and more practice of meditation, that maybe it runs wild for 10 minutes and then it's down to 5 minutes and then it runs wild for 3 minutes, right? There seems to be a decrease in the amount of time where it runs wild. Probably because after this meditation, each meditation, you don't go and try and put it back into a 20 by 20 fenced off area. You don't just give it 20 acres when it's time for meditation. You give it 20 acres and then you leave it with 20 acres. Meditation is not just the time where you go from a small space to a big space. What happens is the big space becomes the default. Freedom becomes the default. So don't be so surprised and don't be afraid. Don't panic when the mind starts racing. It's only racing because you've given it so much room. And that activity, all of that galloping and trotting around, exploring, it's not going to last forever. You just haven't waited it out long enough. When you wait it out, what you find is it's like, there's a lot of initial influx in the activity, but then 5 minutes and it starts calming down. It starts relaxing. That being said, you can't have the thoughts of when is this going to relax? When is it going to relax? Because that then is the activity itself. It's just patience. Give it freedom, have patience, and allow it to be as it is. And then you just enjoy that rest. You enjoy that relaxation. And you start realizing all it wants is freedom. Freedom to do its thing. And that's when it clicks. That this entire time you were trying to control. You were limiting its freedom. And it did not like that. So, hopefully this helps. I'll see you in the next one.